Thank you guys for coming. My goodness. Oh, there's Nabil.
Day one for everyone so far.
How's day one for everyone so far? I should not talk that loud.
Yeah.
That was a lovely smattering of applause. Hi.
Guys, a hand for our wonderful composer and arranger, Benjamin Wallace.
You want me to talk?
Yes.
Hi.
What's your name?
So my name is Ben. I guess I should introduce myself.
Yes. What's your social security number?
Yeah. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Here's my Discord handle. No. So hi. I'm Benjamin Wallace. I'm a composer and arranger. I'm a member of Disco Cactus and a few other ensembles. I'm based out of Brooklyn, New York. I guess. Yeah, Bushwick. So I guess just a little bit. So what you're here to witness today is sort of like a standard chamber music workshop type thing. I've worked with Videri actually only recently. We've been trying to work together for quite a bit of time, and I've always been busy, and they've been busy, and we've crossed paths a billion times, because I'm always busy with other commissions, or for the longest time I was taking classes in grad school for a while, but now sort of this year we finally touched base and we were able to work together, and so earlier this year I wrote them an arrangement of some Legend of Zelda. Schubert, yeah, it was a combination of Schubert and Link to the Past, which you'll hear on Saturday at 3 p.m. at the
Gazebo.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, and what we did today is once they found out that they had a panel, Rosie and I talked, and we came up with the idea of doing sort of a live workshop type thing. So I operate mostly in sort of the concert classical music space. So when I work with a chamber ensemble, it's I'll write them a piece, we'll go, they'll play it for me, we'll workshop things, we'll prune it, and we'll tweak it, we'll change things oh, this didn't really work here, or oh, this might be better if we do this phrase like this, using this technique or whatever. And so we thought it would be cool to sort of show you what that process looks like. And I guess before we play it, I should play the source material of this. I'm not good at explaining this, I apologize.
Do you think we should play the source material first, or should we play it first? How should we?
We just play.
You want to just
we're going to
play
play first. Also, Ben didn't hear this.
Yeah, so I actually, I'm talking with my back to you, and I feel really weird, but I'm going to disagree with you, Ben. I think we should play the arrangement, and what I want you all to know is that Ben has never heard us play this arrangement. We kind of set it up so that it was this is the first time he's heard it, so now he gets to hear some of the decisions and articulations we decided on. So I think we should just play it, and then see where it goes.
Okay. Do you want me to put the score up now or later?
I think you should put the score up.
Yeah. Okay.
You told him this first time, but okay.
You can follow along with the score here.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I can guarantee ahead of time they're all the right notes.
Yeah. I only ever play right now. Okay.
You can turn it down.
That sounded great.
Oh, you.
I did. So that was the first time I've heard this, and it's also the first time you've heard this. So
at least that's the hope.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So now I feel like we should talk about why this exists and what the source material is and what the piece might look like in the future. Should we do that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So, as this is in the title of this piece is called Amber Clouds and Sleeping Birds. It's actually based off of music from the game Banjo-Tooie, with music by Grant Kirkhope, from the level Cloud Cuckoo Land. So this is like a romantic take on a deep cut from like a very old game. So I have the source material pulled up here just to give you some context.
I turned it on. Easy.
Yeah. Great. That's all I'll play. Yeah.
So we actually pulled this up while rehearsing, and Chris goes, I have so many questions.
Yeah. Do you want me to go through and detail all the references?
I actually want us to maybe guess.
Sure, that works.
Well, because when we were playing, I said, I was like, this reminds me of something, and I couldn't place it. And I am useless when it comes to microphones. I was like, this sounds very familiar to me, but I can't place it. And I think it was Chris is like, yeah, it's like a Beethoven slow movement. So that was the first thing that we thought of, was like a Beethoven string quartet slow movement.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's definitely inspired by that. Like when I was writing this, the goal was to make a piece that was in dialogue with the 19th century romantic tradition of Beethoven. I was listening to a lot of Brahms before I wrote this.
I said it was the next
Yeah.
that one part with the violas. Brahms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
Brahms is my boy.
Johannes, baby.
Yeah. So yes, that is correct.
I'm gonna get punched in the face. Uncomfortably close. That's
Yeah.
what I texted you, by the way.
Oh, that part at
That's why I texted you.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
Makes sense. So yeah. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. So essentially, what I did is. So usually when I arrange video game music, either for Disco Cactus or for Videri or from other people, I tend to not really go down the sort of like cover route. It's not sort of like interesting to me to just sort of like cover a tune straight. Sometimes if a tune is like really, really complex and interesting, or if it's a tune that's very near and dear to my heart, I won't really do anything to it. Like I've been arranging the music of Final Fantasy XII recently, and I didn't really change any of the notes because I love that score, and that score is very complex and beautiful. So I sort of wanted to leave it as is. Whereas a lot of stuff I've done for either like Materia or Disco Cactus or other people, I usually like to take a tune that's not interesting to listen to and make it more interesting to listen to. And I played Banjo-Tooie when I was a kid, growing up in the 90s, and there's something about this tune that always stuck out to me because it was Grant Kirkhope's like most harmonically complex one, because it just changes keys every second. So I had just finished a scoring project over the summer, and I was supposed to be writing them the Link to the Past thing, and then I got sidetracked and started working on this instead, which happens a lot. And essentially what it is so like those opening chords in the Banjo-Tooie, they go bum 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 ba da da dum. That's your opening notes, Jeremiah, and the cello. So if you see here, it's just slowed down to a snail's pace. And then everything on top of that is harmonized to sort of fit in this 19th century tonal sphere-ish thing. And then on the next page, when you have the violins here going bum, 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 boo, da, 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 that's also from the track. That's the only thing that's left as is in original context. And then
Still slower, though.
still slower. It's super, super slow, yeah. And then where it says A in the box over here, the two violins then play the original melody as it appears in the banjo-tooie, but also just super, super slowed down and completely reharmonized. And then by the end of the second page, it's just me, and all the original source material is kind of gone. So essentially what the arrangement is I used Grant Kirkhope's music as sort of like a seed to then develop this thing that's kind of more me and less him, but still in dialogue with that original music and still connected there in some capacity. Yeah. Awesome. Also, you guys sounded great playing it.
Thank you.
It will get better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So
did you have anything that you heard that you want to hear differently, or that you didn't necessarily? I'm not going to say that you didn't like it, but that it wasn't what you expected.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Yeah. We could
Were they just wrong notes or actually like character things?
No, they were the character things. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have specifics?
Yeah, actually, the opening was a bit too slow. Actually. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, I would say the opening could be like a hair faster, which I think would help set the momentum a little bit better, because it is supposed to be like a Beethoven slow movement in the middle of a larger string quartet, and that's actually what this piece is. And I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I want to write more of these based off of Banjo-Kazooie and have like a minuet and trio, and then have like a first movement like in sonata form, and like a final movement that's loud and fast.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I thought the beginning could have been a little faster.
What about the articulation? Because in the beginning you have it separate, piano dolce, which for those not musically literate, dolce means to play sweetly, and then later you slur them. So you have in bar 3, you have slurs with some tenutos in my part. Right. And you have some just slurs on top. So we were wondering, because when we first played this, Mateus and I played separate in the beginning, and then we just started doing dum in one bow. That's
my mistake.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
so we can do it.
And I'm just noticing this now. This is why we have these workshops.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say every time you play two notes that are the same.
Nice.
I would do the tenuto slur. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. The single bow stroke.
Yeah, we can do both back to back.
Sure.
Yes. As written.
As written.
As written.
Sounds like Pachelbel's canon. It's like almost the same, but not quite. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the differences are super subtle, but I think I would prefer the second. Okay. Yeah. You could even do some hairpins, like bum bum dee dee. Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah.
It's on.
It was.
Okay, it's on. But I think that I wanted to say something too, and that how many of you out there arrange? Awesome. Yeah. That's a great number of people. So we actually probably spent like a good 2 or 3 minutes discussing the different bowings here. So what I kind of want to impart to people in this panel as well is that we take everything very, very literally. If you put it in the part, we will discuss it, and we will did they do this on purpose? What do they mean behind this? So just be aware of that. We really, we are trained to really not break the rules, or really not to go out of the box, in a sense.
It's a little early to let them know that we're crazy.
Yeah.
Give it like
just a little.
It's actually
Oh, they knew.
it's Beethoven's fault, though.
Yeah, it is Beethoven's
He's the
fault.
one who's like, you do this, you know.
Well, I think it's more the people around Beethoven's fault.
What do you say?
I think it's the people around Beethoven's fault for that. I don't
good
think
point,
it's Beethoven.
yeah.
I think Beethoven was chiller, had more chill than that.
Yeah, yeah,
Personally,
but-
yeah.
If you look at some of the scores, like Beethoven was super meticulous about. I mean, after Beethoven's point, people started becoming super meticulous about putting in every marking because they want you to play what they wrote. They don't want too much. I mean, some interpretation, but yeah. So we're trained that way. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
And a lot of composers are trained that way. A lot of you find a lot of composers who come in and out of conservatory or who are operating in like concert classical spaces who get really, really particular about like, well, no, it has to be like a tenuto staccato tied to a 16th note at the beginning of a quintuplet and blah, 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 blah. It has to be exactly that. And I'm the complete opposite. I'm just like, yeah, it sounds great. Let's just do that. It's fantastic, yeah. I also have to point out, I don't know if we didn't really talk about this, but like being able to work with my performers in this sort of detailed capacity is not a thing that like film scores and game scores really get an opportunity to do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like because a lot of that music is done in session during like big recording sessions where you have like very limited time. Whatever you write down on the page is what it will sound like once it gets put into the game or put into the movie or whatever. So this is a process that mostly happens when preparing for live concerts and such.
What about A?
What about A? I like
this
A.
this espressivo theme. This is you.
No,
Or this is from
that's the original.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
But in minor instead of major.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I thought it sounded good. I think it could be more. So many of my colleagues would hate me for saying this. I could think it could be a little schmaltzier. Like you could
baby.
Really lean,
That's
like a
great,
little bit
yeah.
more of a vibrato.
Okay.
Like really like lean into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Or we can try.
I would also say at measure 7, where you have the falling tritone chords, that could be just a little bit quicker.
Quicker.
Yeah. Just a bit. Sorry.
Good luck.
It's a high C.
If you wanted to like accidentally take the score off the page when we do these runs, that'd be okay with me.
Sure, yeah.
Like temporary black screen. I wouldn't mind.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
You want to maybe do from A?
We can
Yeah.
do from 5 if you want to try the
5?
Yeah, give me another shot.
Okay, let's do from 5.
From measure 5. I get closer.
So maybe it's too fast now. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a lot of issues with tempo actually. I've had instances where I've told a conductor like, oh, it needs to be slower, and then it's too slow, and I'm just like, I should have just let it be. But somewhere in between those, I think would work well. Yeah. I have a couple of phrasing notes for you guys. Yeah. Mostly in let's see. Actually, mostly at the passionato at measure 12. Each one of those, every time you hit beat 2 or beat 4, bum, body, body, you know, you can really like ham that up, sit on, maybe not sit on that note for a little while, but make that the landing point. Each time, yeah, definitely. And then super big at measure 14, down here with the più mezzo forte. That's like a really big landing point. And Jeremiah, you specifically, I would accent the D natural to C sharp at the beginning of that measure. Ba-da-dee-da, bum, bum, bum. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By accent, do you mean bring them out, or accent like how you have me in the 4th and 5th, or 5th and 6th, 8th of that bar?
Just bring out.
Bring it out.
Bring out.
It's
Yeah.
kind of, it's still on the like schmaltzy side.
Yeah.
Okay. I get a little bit. I'm excited.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And then I would say in measure 15, you could even, I know I didn't write forte, but you could peak up to forte a little bit to make the fall back down to piano in measure 16 a little bit more, a starker contrast.
In the center of the bar?
Yeah. Or even on the arrival of beat 4 of measure 15, like really get to forte and then come all the way down to piano in the beginning of measure 16.
This is actually an interesting dilemma that we as performers run into, where there's repetitive lines, like, or patterns that appear in music, and we actually spend a lot of time talking about patterns and how to make them different, and trying not to say the same thing twice in the exact same way. So this is it's kind of a fun way to be almost not negating, but like bringing out the idea that because it's a pattern, it's more interesting to actually make it in a similar way, or even building, growing from the first to the second to the third, rather than trying to make it as a like 3 separate voices saying the same thing. So this is pretty. Yeah. Just thought I'd point that out.
I'm gonna try again from the same spot.
Yeah, where was that?
A.
A. It's letter A.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah. One other thing I would say too is in measure 16, this is this big cadential moment. You could even slow down during the last 2 beats. And like
the opposite of what we did.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Like ever so slightly, like, and just sort of like dig into the string a little bit more, because this is the only phrase in the whole thing that's kind of angry and aggressive in some fashion.
Nice.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah.
Can we try from 15?
Yeah, let's try.
15.
Nice. So I would say with this section at rehearsal B in the box up there where it says sprightly, it could be a little slower than that. And I would also say, I never say things like this, but like I would sort of imagine like fireflies at night, like in the dusk. It should be this like calm, you know, twilighty kind of a thing, where just, you know, like one voice, either the cello or the viola, is just sort of singing out into the night, and everyone else is just, you know, to make it this like really like quiet, tender thing.
Wait, how is everyone else? Can you do everyone else again?
What?
the everyone else. So the cello is singing and everyone else is?
Everyone is.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Like, you know, like, yeah.
You do.
like you always do.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, this is it's an interesting spot too, because that's another spot where we stopped and we were just like, okay, so it says sprightly. Does that mean a little faster? Also, like we have these repeated notes with dots on top of them, and that can be interpreted as a variety of styles. Like, Chris, would you mind demonstrating? Or
where could you?
Oh.
Yeah, where they're still separated, but it's a little more like foggy, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like sort of like on the string and off the string.
Or
Yes, it's typically known as on or off the string.
Yeah. Can I hear you guys do it on the string? Like
On the
sort of
string
soft
now.
one? Yeah.
Do you want the cello?
Arrangement in
Yeah.
motion. All right.
Wow. Yeah, that's right.
I think I like that better, actually. It's a little bit more twinkly.
Nice.
Which is nice.
Awesome.
I would say that the differences between the two ways of playing that is, so when you're on the string, you have a little more control if you want to do like shapes. So we can do a little more like da-da-da-da-dee-da-dum. And when we're off the string, we're kind of limited by the way that the bow is bouncing. So the shape is a little more fixed, if that makes sense. Yes. Sorry, Rosie.
I was going to say very, very similar things, and Mateus kind of told me or said those. But what I was going to say is that anytime you have off the string, it becomes very, very active, and it can kind of shift the focus away from what you might not necessarily want. So even though, like Ben was talking about wanting very sparkly, I think we were able to achieve that sparkle on the string, which sometimes seems counterintuitive. And I think that that's why it's really nice to be able to work with live musicians for anything, because you can have an idea in your head and the textbooks tell you to write it one way, but it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, you just have to know people and be like, hey, play this for me.
Yeah, and that's actually why these kind of collaborations are really interesting, because like I viewed this B section, this sprightly section, as kind of elven and jumping and sprightly in the sense of like on the chipper side. So it's really interesting that your intention was to be ghostly and fairies and. I got it.
More on the same wavelength, yeah.
And yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I would give you the mic to drop, but I don't want to be rude.
Yeah. Chris is like, I figured it out.
What about letter C?
Letter C.
Moving along.
Moving along. Yeah. Can I talk about a couple things before letter C?
No.
Okay, fine. But fine, I'll just go home. Yeah, no, I was going to say, I would say for the second half of bar 23, think Shostakovich for like a brief moment. This like dark, low, deep, brooding thing for a hot second. Yeah. But yeah, and then letter C. Yeah, letter C was good. You could linger on the fermata for just a little bit longer, and then like decrescendo a little bit. And this is sort of the same thing like we talked about before. The lead up into letter C could also be stretched ever so slightly. Is this sort of like Brahmsian rise-ish kind of a thing. And I would say bring out the second violin line there. Because you've got the hemiola. Yeah. It's all about the hemiola.
So Ben, this is one of those moments where we actually did that the first time, then we talked about it. We're like, well, what if we don't do that?
Oh.
I wanted to do it. Just
Except for Jeremiah. So, I mean, I think it's very interesting that like what we talked about and decided was very different from what you had imagined. Yeah. So should we try it? Yeah. How we played it the first time, which was apparently right.
It's so hard to turn that on and off.
you want to go from Shasti?
Yes. You do 23, beginning of the bar?
Beginning of bar.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, could you do the second half of the bar?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
I thought of Brahms concerto, and I just went.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep going.
Did anyone see the look of panic on my face to Chris?
Like no. Yeah, that's the idea, though. Yeah.
Sorry. Ben, I did have a question about measure 24.
Yes.
How that I'm the only one that is written in a specific way. Is that
That's a mistake on my part. Yeah, everybody should play it that way.
Jeremiah had a really good theory.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to talk about
No,
it.
talk about your theory. We really like it.
What about these, Ben?
Yeah. No, that's absolutely a mistake on my part. I think everybody should be phrased that way.
Can't turn this on with big fat thumbs. So my theory was that I'm the only one that is harmonically different in that measure. I'm the only one that starts on one note and ends on a different one.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh.
Please tell me.
You
Please tell me
are
it's true.
correct. Yes. Yeah, you are correct.
Validated.
Yeah.
So what was the thought process for that? Like why was it just the harmonic difference?
I needed to get to a different key.
Yep.
So you were the one to do it.
That's quality.
Yeah.
I love it.
My theory was right.
Yeah.
Maybe for the wrong reasons, but it's okay.
Same place.
Okay.
That one. Okay.
Started in a different place.
that sounded great. Yeah, I would say with the second Passionato in 29, it could be, I would take out the dolce and just replace it with like, molto espressivo or something like that. It should be this like gut-wrenching, very like cheesy, sort of like, oh my heart, kind of a like lamenting kind of a thing. Just like the deepest, like like you have just poached chicken in red wine for 8 hours. And you have reduced it down and thrown in an entire stick of butter and poured it on top of the meat. It's just, oh God, it's so rich. It should be like that,
Is it dinner time?
It is actually. Yeah, the whole section should just be dripping in, in savory.
Okay. Dripping.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to come back later to this, and he's not going to know why he wrote that.
Do you want to do it from there?
Dripping?
From dripping.
From dripping.
From dripping.
From dripping.
My pickup?
Yeah, sure.
No, that sounded awesome.
Convenient place to stop this.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. No, yeah. That was great. No, that sounded great. Yeah. Yeah. I would say with rehearsal D, big box D up there, it could be a little bit louder when it starts, like mezzo forte, mezzo piano, maybe, as opposed to piano.
What are you thinking here for the atmosphere?
Atmosphere-wise, this should be sort of like a warm repose kind of a thing, like. I'm trying to think of a good food analogy. I can't think of one at the moment. This is what I do when I teach composition to other students. I'm just like, well, it's like...
This is like mashed potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. Or just like, it doesn't have enough salt in it. You need to season it a little bit more, and then the piece will really shine, when it's played on stage. I'm thinking, this should be like like a hot chocolate, like while watching the sun. This like warm, internal feeling, which is, this like very nice little.
But not too sweet.
No, not at all. Yeah.
You see, our initial interpretation was what Rosie said, that it was that you were walking in a forest and you saw a church.
A church.
Anyway, yeah, we were playing it churchy, so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Now we're gonna play it chocolatey.
Well, actually, I don't think that's super
but
far
not
off.
too sweet. 70%.
It should have a sort of like Bach quality to it. This very sort of like,
So Bach eating chocolate.
Bach chocolate.
Yeah.
Bach eating chocolate.
Yeah. If Bach made chocolate, this is what it would sound like.
This is what we got our doctorates for. This is how we talk.
Mateus and Chris are both doctors, by the way.
Ben is almost a doctor.
I will be a doctor in a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo.
Thank you.
Master's buddies.
They're masters.
You can call him doctor, you can call me master.
Yeah.
Chocolate? We can fix that in post, right?
We just cut that out.
All right.
Chocolate.
Where are we starting?
The chocolate Bach.
That's D, right?
Yeah.
It is.
I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Yeah. Nice. So I have to admit something. Everything at letter E, this is actually the jingle that plays in the game when you get a jiggy.
When you get what?
When you get a jiggy, like a jigsaw piece in Banjo-Tooie, like you get it and it goes plum bagadagum dum dum plum plum bagabagum budum budum bum. So it's just that, but turned into Schubert, you know. Yeah. Yeah, which is why it ends on like that weird blues chord at the end. But yeah, I have two things. In measure 36, when the viola, violin 2, and the cello have that one staccato note, I was going back and forth on whether or not it should be a 16th note 8th rest or just as a like the old staccato where it's just half duration. So it should be, you know, da dee dee bum. Bob, you know, there should be a slight
So you want a
breath.
lift.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said lift.
Luft. Yeah. And then in measure 38, Chris, you're on violin 2, right?
Yeah.
You bring out that F sharp
The
The half bar?
on the beginning of beat 4.
huh?
On the beginning of beat 4. Da dum.
Oh, the
Yeah, because it's a 2/3 suspension there. You want to like sit on the suspension for a hot second. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So maybe we should try the lift. Yeah, let's go from D and try the lift.
Chocolate Bach again.
Yeah, somebody want to leave some time.
Was it more chocolatey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want more chocolate? Less chocolate? More Bach or more chocolate?
More Bach.
More Bach.
It was too sweet, man.
Yeah.
Too sweet.
It also has sort of like a wedding string quartet vibe here, which you can lean into. That's the idea. Yeah.
It's really difficult to hear Chris and Rosie there at the beginning of 43, so I always get lost.
I also did not help.
Anyway.
Should it be grander at the end, or?
A little bit, yeah. It should be this like kind of like Mahlerian bigness sort of thing, especially in measure 43, where there should be sort of like, I'm also like, I have the Midi running in my head too while I think about this, and I don't want to give you suggestions that are like, well, the Midi sounded like this, so you should sound like that. You know, it's like it's not about that. But I do like the idea of there being sort of like not a smooth transition from piano to forte between measures 42 and 43, where you have this like, sorry, Mahler's the wrong reference. Beethoven 6 should be a better reference for rehearsal E there. It's this like pastoral joy that just sort of like erupts in measure 43.
Got it.
Nice.
If that helps.
Should we do questions? Yeah. Maybe we do questions.
Oh yeah, because we only have 5
minutes.
We have 5 minutes left.
We can take a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Or Ben.
We can take a Ben.
We can take a Ben.
Yeah.
Come on up.
We'll give you a microphone.
Is there a microphone?
We stole the mic.
We still wait. Microphone is coming.
No question.
There's a microphone coming.
Oh, we have a
Yay!
Testing. Okay.
We can hear you. Hooray!
All right. So you four, can you tell if a string player arranges or if it's not a string player that arranged for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I can tell
Yes.
by your bowings that you are probably not a string player.
I am not a string player. I am the opposite. I'm a percussionist by heart. Yeah.
Also, look, when I first met Ben, which how many years ago is that? It's like
7.
7 years
Yeah.
ago. Let me tell you about his bowings.
Oh, I mean, I've seen highly
7 years ago.
questionable bowings.
Yeah.
No, it's actually really it's a really rewarding and awesome opportunity to be working with a composer, because we get to see this side of, like, you know, when we first started playing together, which was for a different group where he was arranging stuff. I would like. He would always ask me, like, hey, what works, what doesn't work? And I'm like, look, Ben, this like doesn't work, like, but you can do it like this. And then, you know, his writing is like, I don't know, it got so much more friendly over the years.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much when I play an arrangement, and when I see the first questionable bowing, I just immediately ignore every single bowing from that point on.
I think also we've kind of, they were talking about how we follow the score pretty precisely, and I think the one leniency that we as string players tend to have is actually with bowings, because most of the time, like most of the big composers, they were pianists or they were conductors. They knew the instruments, they knew most of the limitations, but even if you look at their original scores, they would have bowings that would be 4 measures long, and yeah, exactly, and it's you just take that as their idea of a phrase, where they think the idea begins and where they think the idea ends, and then what I actually think is one of the most enjoyable parts about being a string player and a musician is that you then have the freedom to apply your own voice, your own thinking, your own method to that piece, to that phrase, and I think that's the most rewarding part too. So,
Thanks.
I promise they don't want you to feel like you're choking, like if you're running out of bow.
Somewhat related, I was noticing in the score, also not a string composer, your downbeats kind of fell in the middle of measures.
Yeah.
I have a question. Was that an artistic choice, or is that something that string players sort of accept? in the score?
So that's a really interesting question. That's more of an artistic choice, actually, sort of based a little bit more out of just things that I've observed in sort of 19th century music. Like there is a lot of pieces by Bach sometimes where like the beginning of a phrase happens in the middle of a measure, partially because before 1900, when you wrote a piece, it's in this key or it is in this time signature. The whole thing is in 6/8. That doesn't change. To change that would be to destroy the aesthetic of the piece in some ways. So you get a lot of pieces where the phrasing changes a little bit, but they keep the time signature as is. And usually I don't do this with my own music. The time signatures change all the time. Like I'll make sure that beginnings of phrases always happen at the beginning of a bar. But because this was me trying to channel the 19th century, it was like, it's in 12/8, it will stay in 12/8, the phrases will land where they do. And, you know, because actually a lot of Brahms does this too. Like the first movement of the Brahms' First Symphony, the downbeat happens in the middle of the bar constantly. And it adds, you could say that it doesn't really change anything, the downbeat is where the downbeat is, but because, like in that piece, it adds this edge, because everybody's sort of playing off the beat a little bit.
Yeah, because I did notice that if you were just timing it out, it could have been like one measure of 3, then back on pickup into the next measure of 12. Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I think they're telling us to wrap it up.
So. I want to just thank everyone for coming. This has been a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We obviously never have any fun when we rehearse, ever. So I just also wanted to invite you, we're all playing a lot this week. So I wanted to just let you know about the rest of our performances. Disco Cactus, which Mateus and Ben are involved in, are playing on Saturday at 2. And then
on the main stage.
Videri, we are playing on the main stage tomorrow at 5 p.m. And Nate Horsfall, who's sitting right there, is going to be doing visuals, which are going to be awesome. And there's going to be lasers. So you should come. And then we're also playing a show at the Gazebo, which is right across the hall, on Saturday at 3 o'clock. And Triforce Quartet is playing at 1 o'clock that day, so you should come see them and then watch us.
Something Triforce, Disco Cactus.
Oh, right. God, Saturday's busy. And then we're also playing at the Gang Awards, which is happening at 8 o'clock. So
on Saturday
anyway,
night.
On Saturday, thank you. Yeah. I'm all over the place. Anyway, again, thank you so much for coming. Come ask us questions if you still have them, and have fun at MAGFest. Thank you.